Attorney Griggs,
Hey brother, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Every time I get you on the line, it's something serious. It's something serious.
Yeah, it's always something going on in the law.
Absolutely. So there's two cases that I want to discuss with you. First, obviously, last night um, it was announced that Mayor Eric Adams was indicted on, well, they said last night it was only one federal charge. And then as we got the press conference this morning, they said it's five charges.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about that, and then of course the case against Sean Puffy Combs, P. Diddy, um, and just trying to get some understanding there because there's a lot of misinformation going out about that case as well. So let's dive right into um, the fact that the Southern District of New York, that office is notorious for their closure rate, meaning that they do not take cases that they don't win because they've already gotten the goods on you.
U.S. Attorney Damon Williams is originally from Atlanta. He's actually a graduate of Woodward Academy. I went to school with him. He was a 10th grader when I was a senior. So he's a prolific attorney, great scholar of the law. And typically, when he indicts someone, he has a strong case and he has great prosecutors in that office. So I fully expect that this case will be thoroughly litigated, both cases. And given the closure rate of almost 90% conviction rate, it's going to be an uphill battle. I read about 15 pages of the 57-page indictment against current Mayor Eric Adams. And it's some disturbing allegations of campaign finance violations and attempting to get and receive gifts from, foreign nationals from Turkey and other places. So it's interesting to watch this play out. I do know that Eric Adams has come out with a very strong statement that he will fight, and he wants every New Yorker to understand that he will fight. But at this point, I would hope his attorneys would, strongly encourage him to stop talking because these allegations go all the way back to 2015, well before he was the mayor, and are pretty strong campaign finance violations from reading the indictment.
Yeah, that's one thing that I don't quite understand. And you and I have had this discussion before about people talking right after they've been indicted. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I do understand that people want to try to get up in front of the charges, get in front of the situation. But there is a thing that everything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. And
Yes.
I don't understand why people um, take the chance of saying something that could trip them up later on. Because he
Yeah.
may
I mean,
not remember what he did in
yeah. And I mean,
2015.
just from reading the indictment, they have text messages and all kinds of digital evidence of what happened. So I think at this point, I know that public figures like to control the court of public opinion, but when you're dealing with an actual courtroom, a criminal matter, you need to be more discreet in your public statements because there will be discovery, there will be evidence that comes out. Some of the evidence you may have forgotten about, like text messages and emails and witnesses who are now cooperating to corroborate the allegations by the state and by the federal government. It's concerning to make extrajudicial statements, which could, in some point, come back to harm you, because now this press conference that he had, all of that is admissible. So if your defense has not been built yet, it's very difficult for your defense attorney to come in after you laid out a defense. And the defense he's laid out right now is this absolutely didn't happen. I didn't participate in any of this, but there appears to be, for at least from the indictment, and typically they place in the indictment the things that they just want you to know up front to show you the strength of their case. Text messages, phone records, witnesses, plane tickets. They have photos of the hotel rooms where he allegedly was given these gifts to fly on Turkish Airlines to different places. I mean, it's all in the indictment. So it's kind of difficult to say, this didn't happen. Now, maybe a better defense is, I have a reasonable explanation for the trips that were not associated with any political dealings with these foreign nationals. But it's clear from the indictment that there is some there.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear how much detail they had as it relates to the trips, the flights, the hotels, the dates, the times. I mean, as you said once in one other segment that we did, we're in a digital era, and there's nothing that takes place that doesn't have a digital footprint. So these guys who are supposedly learned, supposedly educated, they should know that there is no covering your tracks. It just is what it is. So it's going to be, like you said, interesting to see how this plays out. One thing that I found very interesting and quite frankly very bold is there has been two major cases within a month, I would say within a week, that the Southern District of New York has presented to the public. And I would think that if they didn't have the goods on Mayor Adams at a time when they're already looked at, and when I say they, I'm talking about the Southern District of New York, they would not want to take the chance, in my opinion, of not having the goods on Mayor Adams, because this is another high profile case. The other, of course, we're talking about P.Diddy. They could not take the chance of bringing this case on, right? With the possibility of it failing and then people saying, oh, now let's look at the P.Diddy case because perhaps they don't have the goods on him either. What do you say to that?
I say, you always take that into consideration when you bring a case, whether or not, it's a high profile defendant or not, whether or not you have sufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you can win this case. And then to carry on top of that, the, extenuating media coverage of anything like this with the high profile defendants. So, I mean, it doesn't get any more high profile than the sitting mayor of New York, one of the biggest cities in the world, now a defendant, and then one of the biggest music moguls. And to do that all in the span of about a week and a half shows you that either they're very well prepared or that they are focused on making sure that the rule of law applies to everyone. And so they're trying to make an example. But I think, like I said, given how long I've known Damon and what type of attorney that he is, I think that this is one of those situations where the case and the facts met the standard. They got an indictment. It was a sealed indictment. So we will know soon when it was actually secured. I didn't read that date stamp part, but it was sealed at first. So it could have been an indictment that was returned weeks ago and then it unsealed, yesterday. And with the P.Diddy situation, again, we knew that there was an investigation going on. We knew from the raids that have happened at multiple of his homes that something was coming. Maybe the timing was just, within a week and a half, we're going to drop both of these cases. But I think that, given it's a federal case, that they've laid out the charges and the evidence they intend to prove, I think that, U.S. Attorney Williams is not afraid of the spotlight. He's done several press conferences now, and I think he understands the level that he's hitting at this point. And I can't wait to see the trial.
Another thing that I found interesting is both of these indictments were introduced or when the media was alerted about it, they were exactly around the same time, 9:30, 9:45 p.m., right? So it's in time to make the 10 o'clock news hit. And then, of course, it's going to be the first thing in the news cycle in the morning. Is that by strategy or is it by coincidence, in your opinion?
I think it's by strategy. I think that at any time, a prosecutor wants to get the greatest impact of charges. So, and they have press teams, they have PR teams. So I think it's not by coincidence that it would drop right before, the main prime time news time on the East Coast. And again, it was spread from there to Central Time, Mountain Time, and of course, the Pacific Time. So dropping it there and then running overnight, I think was not a coincidence. And then again, dealing with the nature of the defendants that you're charged, I think they wanted to send a message and get out ahead of the attempt to spin in the court of public opinion.
I get alerts like you all the time. And as soon as it hit, I'm looking at my watch and I'm like, this is identical to the time that Diddy's indictment came out from that same office. So it does seem to be a deliberate strategy here. let's jump into the P. Diddy case for a second. There's a lot of information out there about his culpability of everything that has been alleged at this point. Now, we have to say until this man is in a court of law, all of the things against him are simply allegations. But the allegations that we do see are very damaging and depraving, if you ask me. In your opinion, as a defense attorney, what is his chances of beating any of these charges?
Well, anytime you're in federal court facing a RICO conspiracy charge to traffic in women, that is an uphill battle. And then given the amount of information that has been released, ahead of discovery, you're going to face a lot of challenges. The first thing you need to do is have a conversation with your client and let them know what you're facing. I think what's even more disturbing about this case is that they obviously played a video at the second bond hearing for the judge who will preside over this case. And whatever was in that video was disturbing enough to prevent actual bond and labeled him a flight risk. So, I mean, there has to be disturbing evidence in this of actual sex trafficking and RICO conspiracy. So, as a defense attorney, your first conversation with your client, and you have that conversation, what can they actually prove and what are we facing here? And so, given that the judge did not grant bond, it seems like the government has a stronger case than normal. I mean, most cases with somebody who's never been convicted of a crime, he has been charged before and been, beaten those charges, but never been convicted of a crime. You generally get bond, especially with somebody of his means. You just, put them on house arrest, take their passport. But for the judge to remain in custody, to stand in custody before trial, that's a big step by a judge. And obviously was some evidence shown at that bond hearing that disturbed the court.
Yeah, he offered a $50 million package, including surrendering not only his passports, but the passports of his children and his mother, in addition to, I guess, the title or the deed on his property in Miami and his mother's property. That is huge. And for the court to walk away from $50 million, because again, let's be real, justice sometimes is about money as well. And the fact that they didn't want that spoke volumes to me as to what I feel they have hanging over his head right now.
Yeah. And any bond hearing, the court is going to hear the facts and some of the proof from the prosecutor. And then they're going to hear about the means and opportunity of the defendant to return to court to make sure they don't violate any terms of the bond, like contacting witnesses or intimidating anyone or obstructing justice. And then ultimately, the amount that they can produce to secure their, return to court. And $50 million is not a light amount of money to anyone. And then, of course, the properties, turn over his passport. I still don't understand the reason why he would need to give his sons and his mother's passport.
Yeah, I didn't understand that either.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me. But, it's trying to show the judge I'm going to come back. They're going to ensure I come back. But for the judge to say no to that, that says a lot of whatever that video that was played in court as far as the evidence that the U.S. attorney has.
Now, that's interesting because I have not heard that there was a video played during that second bond hearing, which makes a lot of sense because I thought with that package that was offered, I was like, yeah, they're going to give him a bond.
Yeah.
So it obviously was very damaging. So there's been a lot of talk right now that he's not in the best of conditions. This is the worst jail in the country. I didn't think there was any jail worse than Fulton County, Wright Street. But apparently this one is very bad. And so he's allegedly on some type of food strike. He's not eating from what I understand. And there's a couple of different reasons why that might be. People say, well, he's fearful that somebody may poison him and that whole Jeffrey Epstein situation might occur, or the fact that he's trying to get put into a hospital of some sort because the conditions are that bad. What do you think the correctional facility is going to do if, in fact, he is not eating?
Well, the correctional facility has the duty, excuse me, to keep him in good shape so that he's in a good position to try his case. And so they're going to attempt to make sure he does have some sort of food and sustenance, because you can't go prolonged amount of time without food. But I do understand the strategy. The strategy is to get him moved and move to a facility that's more suitable for an individual of his means. Now, we got to understand that, wealth does not buy you a different set of rules when it comes to incarceration. But if there's a health condition that's being exacerbated, that will get you into a medical facility, which could be the plan here, or it could be to reapproach the court for a second bond hearing because of deteriorated health. So it's a lot of things that could be coming into play in this particular situation. I think ultimately, Sean Combs is coming to the reality that he's not going to be able to control this situation the way he normally does. And I think that comes with any celebrity that finds himself, squarely in the throes of a criminal allegation and an arrest. So I think the best thing to do at this point would be to work with the DOC through your attorney to get proper food, make sure it's monitored, there's nobody slipping anything in there, because we don't want anybody to be harmed for any reason simply because they're accused of something and they're in custody pre-trial. But yeah, I think that could be a reason why those things are happening. Or otherwise, it could be he just has not come to grips with where he is right now and how he's going to get out of the situation. A lot of defendants, when they are faced with the reality of sitting in jail for months without knowledge of when there's going to actually be a resolution to this, they go through a lot of things. And I think in that particular facility, they always put individuals on suicide watch, which I heard that he was on or is on because of the, mental reality that comes with being in custody and not having a foreseeable release date.
Wow. There is chatter online, of course. We have two Black men, very powerful Black men, who emanate out of New York, who are being taken down by the system. And so there's that talk. There's that element of, I'm not even going to say conspiracy, but it is a thought process. It is a narrative that's out there. I have my thoughts on this particular narrative, but what do you think as it relates to both of these defendants, being from New York, being Black, and being prosecuted, when possibly this stuff could have been held or dealt with behind closed doors? What do you say to that?
Well, my response is nobody's above the law. And I understand the feeling of many in our community about the weaponization of the justice system against African-American men. I've seen it. But I also know that there are individuals who need to be held accountable for actions. Now, I'm not saying these two individuals are that. They're going to have due process. They're going to have their opportunity to be heard and to confront their accusers, all the constitutional rights. But I think we have to realize that we're in a time now where there are Black judges, there are Black lawyers. This is actually a Black prosecutor. And so I'm kind of trying to figure out how the system is trying to take down a Black man when most of the people in the system in these cases are actually Black men that are doing the prosecuting. And then you have to realize that, in many of these cases, there are Black victims. And so, we got to make sure that we're balanced in this conversation as we move towards what justice looks like. And so I think in these cases, time will tell whether the evidence is there or not. And if the evidence is not there, then a jury of their peers, which will hopefully be some amount of Black people and other ethnic minorities on the jury, because New York is a very diverse city. It's a very diverse state in that area. And so I think that they will get a jury of their peers, and then we'll actually see. But it's too early to say that the justice system is being weaponized to take down Black men in these two cases. I don't think these two cases fit.
Okay, and my last narrative is this. You have two black men indicted in New York. We have one gentleman named Mr. Trump indicted in New York. Nothing happens. How do you just, not you, but how does the system justify that?
Well, the system justifies that Mr. Trump was convicted of 34 felonies and is facing sentencing in November. Now, I can see the argument being made, why is his sentencing continuing to be pushed back? He should have been sentenced a while ago, and that should have been a custodial sentence or probation or something else. And so for people to say nothing happened, a jury of his peers found him guilty. And so I can't go along with this narrative that, the system is treating in New York is treating individuals differently. We see Epstein and Weinstein. If Epstein had lived, he probably would have been convicted just like R. Kelly was. Weinstein has been convicted multiple times. And so I don't see that narrative matching up. I see that the justice system is doing what the justice system does. And typically when you go into the federal justice system, you don't come out until several years later after going through a federal corrections facility, unless you're my client. But, I think that what we have to realize here is this is how the process works. There's a lot of internet chatter, a lot of conspiracy theory, but we got to go with facts. And currently there are no facts that show that there's been a weaponization of the criminal justice system against these two individuals. Further, it doesn't show that other high profile cases in that jurisdiction have received different treatment than these two individuals. One of the individuals, I granted, was not granted bond, even though he had substantial means, but clearly the court saw something in that presentation of evidence that convinced the court to not grant bond. The other individuals were all given bonds. One of them is out on the bond, subject to sentencing, and after the sentencing, he probably won't be out on bond. He probably won't be free at all. So I think that people need to understand that it's a process. It's a slow process, but it, typically gets it right most of the time. And the last thing I would say about all of this, we keep having this conversation about the justice system and it being disproportionately unfair to African Americans. My question to some of these criminal defendants is, where's the African American lawyers defending you? On one hand, you can't argue racism and the system being weaponized, and then on the other hand, not depend on those people that have matriculated to this level to actually do this. There are exceptional African American defense attorneys. So on one hand, you can't play the race card and then not, play the other hand of that card. And again, there are great lawyers of all colors, of all creeds. But let's let the criminal justice system play itself out before we start throwing the race card out there. Because again, it diminishes the ability of, to make valid claims of racial discrimination if we use it all the time.
No, you're absolutely right. And again, I like to look at both sides of this. That's what we do here. I mean, that's what justice is supposed to be, right? A balanced approach to figuring out justice versus non-justice, I guess. Like always, brother, your insight on these things is invaluable, and I appreciate you taking out the time. Obviously, I'm not in my studio; I'm on the road. But when these things come, you got to be prepared to deal with them as they come. And I appreciate you taking out your time to be here to give us some information and some knowledge on what's going down right now.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I appreciate this platform. It's always great to be able to get the accurate information out. I know on all these platforms, there are a million different theories, but the only theory that matters is the theory that the prosecution is going to put forward, and then the theory that the defense is going to counter. And then ultimately there will be a decision. And that's what I love about the practice of law. There will be a decision made by an impartial body as to what the truth is. I think we need more interjection of truth and less conspiracy theory on all of these platforms.
Well said. With the case with Mayor Adams and of course with P.Diddy, we're going to be talking a lot because This stuff is, there's going to be information coming out probably on the daily. So between your busy schedule and mine, we'll get together again and we'll let the people know what's really going on.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'll be here every time you call.
I appreciate you, sir, and we'll see you on the other side.
All right, brother.